Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I thought I would provide a video talking about my philosophy on my book reviews. A lot of people have different ways that they write book reviews. Some people's are very structured and they're very very intensely written and every word is very well chosen. And then some people just write their rambling thoughts. And then there's some people who will their review is a couple of sentences and that's it. And then there's some people I know who don't even really write reviews. They just want to get the rating out there for people to see. And so I thought I would talk a little bit about my philosophy, not just on how I do my reviews, but especially on specifically why and some of the reasoning behind some of it. So the first thing I talk about is my general structure. I try to write my reviews in a general way. I try not to go over 1,000 words if it's a written review because I don't want to lose an audience. That being said, unless it's a really short book or I just honestly don't have a lot to talk about with the book, I try to not go under 300 words because I want to provide as much of a full idea of what I thought of the book. I want to be somewhat full. In a similar vein, with the YouTube video, I try not to make a review shorter than 5 minutes generally because I want to provide as much thought about it without seeming too long. So I try not to go too much over maybe 15 minutes unless I'm delving into spoilers or I have something really, that really needs to be discussed in more depth. So that 5 to 15 minutes is a good sweet spot for me as a reviewer. And then I also try to really address if there's going to be spoilers in the book because I don't want to spoil people, and there's certain things that I consider non-spoilers, like if anything's released in the marketing of a book, then I don't consider that to be a spoiler. And then also if it's like on the cover of the book or if it's a widely known fact about a book series, especially if it's something from book one, there's a little bit more wiggle room there, but I generally try to avoid spoilers whenever I can, although some people say I've spoiled things before and some people say I don't talk about spoilers enough, so I don't know what to do with that. So I then want to talk about some other aspects of my philosophy. I have 4 particular aspects that I want to delve into. So the first aspect of my philosophy on reviewing is my philosophy on authors, which is never attack the author personally. I oftentimes disagree with authors and oftentimes find authors that I generally, whether there's a personal reason or there's even a writing style reason, I generally don't like the author. That happens quite a lot with the books I read, which is totally fine. And I'm sure you have authors you can think of that you don't enjoy. But when it comes to reviewing the book, I try to look at it in 2 ways. One is to see how it compares to the author's other works, but also at the same time to view it as a work of art, as a work of literature on its own. And so I do want to give each book that I read a legitimate chance, and I do want each book I read to be enjoyable if possible. I never go into a book wanting to dislike it. And so because of that, I don't want to attack the author. Sometimes authors mess up, or sometimes authors just have styles that don't work for me, or sometimes authors are bad, but it's not right for me to go personally attack the person, just as I don't want authors to be attacking me, the reviewer. So that's why I want to be careful about how I treat authors on the channel. Reviews, my main philosophy is reviews do need to focus on the material itself, on what's present in the book and the style. You can criticize the author, but don't be mean to them. Don't put them down for things. My second philosophy I'll talk about is the same type of thing, but geared towards audiences and readers, which is don't attack readers and audiences. One of my favorite authors, John Dexton Miller, likes to use this quote: "Every book is someone's first, and every book is somebody's favorite." And so because of that, even a book I may not dislike might be someone's favorite book. And in a similar vein, a book I love might be someone's least favorite. And so attacking people or going after people or saying their reading tastes are bad or saying things like, they're not a real fantasy fan, or they're not a real reader, is something I just want to avoid in my reviews as much as possible, because I want to be generally respectful of readers and audiences. For one thing, I think it's just the proper thing to do to be respectful of people, not to attack people for things they like or don't like. But the second reason is because I want everyone watching my channel, and I'm free to disagree with you on it, but if I feel like attacking people or putting them down for those things is not the best way to grow an audience necessarily. I know there's some people who have done that on their YouTube channels, but I don't want that to be my path to success, and I do not believe it will be. The third philosophy that I wanted to talk about was my philosophy on being fair in my reviews. This is something that I've had to be very more delicate about more recently than when I started the channel. When I first began the channel, it was purely me talking about books that I was reading, that were traditionally published, that I was interested in reading. Most of them had been published years ago, and so I wasn't necessarily affecting the print run-on, and occasionally I was talking about new books, but those weren't getting much attention. Now, as the channel has grown, I have been able to have more influence and discussions on current books and recently released books, as well as upcoming books in terms of early release copies. I've been able to develop a friendship with several authors that I know. I've also been able to develop some relationships with some editors at some publishers, and I've been able to work on getting early editions of books whenever possible, which I really enjoy. And I can't read every book ahead of time, and I can't read every book that people want to send to me, because there's some authors and some publishers that I do have to turn down. But generally, I'm trying my best to get to as many of them as I can. And with this now produces a need for disclaimers and need for fairness, a discussion about it. I try to be as fair as possible in terms of when they send me the review of the book. If I didn't like it, I try to be honest about it. Thankfully, most of the books that have been sent to me, I've really enjoyed. There have been a few where I've either known the author or the editor or both, and I have had to be careful because I did not want to hurt the author's feelings, and so I have agreed not to publish the review on the channel. Or if I have been very careful about being respectful to the author, as I mentioned earlier. But this, I have to be honest, so I cannot release a review talking about a book, raving about a book, and then not actually have enjoyed the book. If you hear me talking about a book that I enjoyed, whether it's an old book that was published decades ago, or whether it's a new release or even an upcoming release, if I'm talking about really enjoying the book, that means I'm really enjoying the book. And if I'm not, I'm not. But I do want to be careful because, for instance, with self-publishing, my feedback could impact an author, and I do not want to particularly negatively impact authors that are new or starting out. In a similar way, I know some new traditionally published authors in a similar way. So there is a tightrope act that you have to be of being fair in my assessment, but also in being careful not to be harmful to them. Because again, I want to help everyone. I want all the books to all be great selling books. I don't want books to be books to fail, even books I dislike, because I want everyone to read as much as they can. So my be fair as possible philosophy is very tough to do. It's a very tough tightrope to walk, but I've been trying to on the channel so far. The final philosophy I want to talk about is my philosophy on how to do a review when it comes to the different mediums. A written review is going to read a little bit differently than a video review. In a written review, I can, if I don't think as many people are going to read it, I can feel more free to ramble. And if I'm anticipating much more people to read it, I try to make it more cleanly made. And then also when I'm doing a written review, I might omit certain things that a video review might focus on. I might omit cover art discussions in a written review because you're not there, you're just there to hear about the book. Whereas on YouTube, the cover is how we kind of get people interested in the video, and so cover discussions are much more prevalent on the videos. So I have to be careful about how I do it. And then also there's the podcast. I do podcasts sometimes with people, and when I do that, we sometimes review books. And the way I do that is differently, because when I do a book review that's written, it takes you only a few minutes to read. And if you're watching a YouTube video, it's maybe 10 to 15 minutes long, whereas a podcast is like an hour long. And so I'm talking for like an hour about the depths of the book, and so I feel much more confident in going really deeply into the minutia of the book. So I have to be careful about which medium am I making the review for, which is why there's slightly differences in my different medium. So that is my philosophy on how I try to do book reviews. I know it's not a perfect system, and I know that it's the system that works for me, that I'm trying to incorporate with my channel. And as the channel grows, I will try to continue to be fair to authors, not attack readers, to try to be comprehensive without spoiling things, and also to make sure that I don't jeopardize relationships. And that is one thing I didn't mention real quick, is that by this, I know some people who will send pirated information in groups, and I've had to be careful about either leaving the group or making sure it's obvious that I do not support that, because I do not want to harm the publishers, or even indie authors for that matter, their works, because I want them to make the money that they're supposed to. So those are my thoughts on my philosophy of how I make my book reviews. Do you have any thoughts on this? What is your philosophy if you write book reviews? And if you don't, what do you think a philosophy should look like? Or do you just like my philosophy entirely? Please let me know in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.